As you've been hearing, the International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defence Minister Yoav Gallant, citing alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity. Equally, it has issued an arrest warrant for Mohammed, the Hamas commander, but Israel has claimed that they actually killed him in an airstrike in July. You also heard that Micheál Martin, our Tánaiste, has said that in the event of Benjamin Netanyahu setting foot in Ireland, that those warrants from the criminal court would be executed. I'm joined on the line by Israel's ambassador to Ireland, Dan Ehrlich. Ambassador, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, first of all, I've been reading and hearing Netanyahu's response. He is outraged by this decision by the ICC.
He's not the only one outraged. All of us, not just me as an ambassador, but all Israelis. We have been failed by the UN and by international mechanisms time and time again. This is a dark moment for the ICC and for international law. And we really are frustrated and outraged by this.
Now, when people look at what has been going on in Gaza and latterly in Lebanon, people would say, Netanyahu, he has a case to answer, and let him answer it.
Well, the people turn to the ICC as a court of last resort when countries are unwilling or unable to investigate themselves. Israel has a robust legal system, and throughout this war, we have been doing so extensively. But what we see in the actual so-called claims, that the factual claims don't hold at the ICC. The ICC is wrong both on the law and the facts, and we can go over each claim and show why this is wrong, and the ICC has not proved any alleged claims to be correct. The ICC is acting as a political tool, and this is what we're concerned about. I think Ireland, as a country that holds international law so dearly, should challenge the abuse of these international mechanisms by political tools.
Now, what they allege against the two politicians is the war crime of starvation as a method of warfare and crimes against humanity of murder, persecution and other inhumane acts. As I say, is there not a question to answer?
Categorically. This we rejected categorically. And if you want to go into these so-called alleged claims, we have shown time and time again that the claims of the situation in Gaza are not correct. People have been claiming starvation, I think, for over a year now, and yet aid goes in. That the report of IPC regarding food security in June has already dismissed the claims of so-called starvation. And those claims were after the ICC presented its case against our prime minister. So why didn't they take into consideration that report that, again, shows there is no so-called starvation? We need to look into facts, not into lies that are repeated time and time again.
But we hear from UNICEF, we hear from UNRWA, we hear from Médecins Sans Frontières, the problems they have in getting provisions for people to keep them fed and getting medical supplies in order to treat people who've been injured in the conflict.
Let's separate the issues. The situation in Gaza is hard. I'm not dismissing it. It's tragic what is going on there under the rule of Hamas. But we need to separate between aid that goes in and the way that aid is distributed to the people. We see the looting, we see the robbery, we see the way that Hamas controls the aid, the way that it threatens population not to get the aid, not to go out, for example, from northern Gaza, from Jabalia, in order to get aid. That needs to be discussed. Finally, we see more and more articles talking about the looting, but we have been warning about it and calling it out for months now. This needs to be addressed. And again, the work of the UN organizations on the ground, many times at the mercy of Hamas, do not take into consideration the full picture. And we see it. We see all of the aid that goes in through the different crossings. We opened more crossings. There is aid going in through the air, through the land, through sea that needs to be acknowledged. And yet in Ireland, it's dismissed.
in Ireland, and was dismissed by our Tánaiste Micheál Martin this morning on on Newstalk, where he said there was a collective punishment of people, behaviour that is genocidal, and he quoted the forced expulsion of many, many civilians from northern Gaza, and he said he had no doubt that war crimes had been committed.
Well, we reject that categorically, and repeating legal terms and legal accusations does not make it correct. And again, we are very much respect for the international law. We are obligated by the rules of war, and we work very closely with all of the UN organizations in order to make sure that more and more aid goes in. There is a problem within Gaza that needs to be addressed. We are not dismissing that, but we need to make sure that we are working together in order to have the people receive the aid that goes in.
Now, there is a paradox here, though, when you look at it. I mean, the conflict has been going on since October the 7th, or shortly thereafter, the atrocity by Hamas on October the 7th. And, you know, you claim that you have, in effect, taken down Hamas. But if you have defeated Hamas, why then are they so effective in stopping the aid getting through?
We have seen in these 413 tragic days the brutal and cynical play of Hamas. Unfortunately, we have also been fighting Hezbollah in the north. We have been fighting the Houthis, who are aiming missiles at Israel. So we are trying to defend our people, while still there are 101 Israelis in captivity by Hamas, cynically. We don't hear UNICEF or the Red Cross calling about Ariel or Kfir Bibas, the children who are held captive for 413 days. Now, absurd acts like the ICC distract us and are a setback in our fight in order to make sure that they come back and see how we can promote any form of stability for our people and for the Palestinians.
Now, the ICC, it might claim that is being even-handed because it also issued a warrant for Mohammed that Israel claims it has killed. But there were warrants for Yahya Sinwar, for example, and others who are dead, which have been withdrawn. But the kind of charges levelled against Hamas are murder, extermination, torture, sexual violence, hostage-taking, the treatment of hostages, widespread and systematic attack against the civilian population of Israel. They are the charges levelled against Hamas. So you could say that the ICC is being very even-handed.
Well, but you cannot equate a democratic country fighting to save its population and defend its population and a genocidal terror organization which bluntly focuses and says publicly that they want to eliminate Israel, Israelis, and Jewish people. There is no equivalence between that. And this is why we reject the way that the court presents it, as if one can make that equation.
Now, the question of anti-Semitism, which is the big charge made by Benjamin Netanyahu against the ICC, that it's behaving in an anti-Semitic way, the idea that you cannot be anti a government in Israel without being anti-Semitic is a nonsense. You can be not against Jews per se, their religion or the people themselves, but you can oppose a particular government that may be made up of Jewish people.
What we see repeatedly is an attack on the most threatened and targeted nation in the world, which is the only state of the Jewish people. And we see it by the UN, which has failed Israel and Israelis time and time again. We see it now in the abuse of the international law mechanism. So when you see it repeatedly being done and attacked against the only country in the region that other countries publicly call for their elimination, and this is the only Jewish state in the world, we do see it as a modern anti-Semitism. When you delegitimize the existence of Israel, when you deny the Jewish people their right for a homeland, that is anti-Semitism. When you repeatedly target the only Jewish state in the world, the state that was created in order to be a safe haven for Jewish people, then yes, I'm sorry, but this is anti-Semitism. And throughout this year, in a very concerning way, we've seen it rise internationally and also in Ireland.
Sure,
a few weeks
I'm
ago,
aware
a
that
Jewish student was attacked in a pub in the city centre in Dublin. The Jewish community, the Israeli community in Ireland are not feeling safe. This is anti-Semitism. This is not criticism against Israel.
Okay, but
we accept criticism.
You know, there are organizations of Jewish people in Germany, for example. There's the Jüdische Stimme, which is the Jewish voice, and they claim that they've been labeled useful idiots by the Israeli government because they uphold the Palestinian right for self-determination and to have their own homeland. The same is true in Britain. There's an organization called NAMROD, British Jews who oppose the war. They call it an occupation and an apartheid. And the view of those kind of people is that holding Jews around the world for Israel's actions, that is what anti-Semitism is. In other words, what Israel does...
There are different definitions of anti-Semitism. And there is an organization, the IHRA, that defines the different elements of anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, Ireland is one of the only countries that have not adopted that definition. So objecting the existence of anti-Semitism does not help us combat that. And I will separate between political opinions, which every person, obviously every Jewish community and every Jewish person is entitled to, and attacking all of the Jewish community or all of the Israelis based on a political positioning of its current government. And this is what anti-Semitism is. And if the communities, the Jewish community and Irish community in Ireland are not feeling safe at the moment, I'm asking the Irish politicians running in the upcoming elections, how are they making sure that the communities are safe? How are they making sure the Jewish students feel safe on campuses? This is something that needs to be addressed because it is anti-Semitism.
And isn't that the point that I quoted to you? Holding Jews wherever they are around the world, be they in Ireland or in the United States or wherever they might be, for holding them responsible for Israel's actions, that is the genesis of the anti-Semitism. Conflating Israel's behavior with the behavior of all Jewish people. Because as you know from within Israel itself, although there seems to be unity in opposition to the ICC's arrest warrants, people are outraged from all sides of the political spectrum, there is a considerable anti-war movement within Israel which opposes what Netanyahu is doing in Gaza and Lebanon.
Well, Israel is a democracy, just like Ireland, and there are many voices, and we are very proud of our very democratic, robust system. So yes, there are many voices and many political views. What we all agree on, that we need to live in safety. What we all agreed on is that 101 Israelis and other nationalities that are still kidnapped in Gaza need to come back home. And I was talking to the grandson of Oded, who's one of the oldest hostages, and he asks me, why in Ireland people don't care about our family, which is held for 413 days in captivity? Why is it just mentioned as an afterthought? Why are they not fighting for us?
Now,
Where is
Ambassador,
the Red Cross? Where is UNICEF?
The problem, I suppose, is that to get the remaining hostages out, and we don't know how many of them are still living, to get them out, it seems like there's some sort of ceasefire will be required, and that does not seem to be.
We have tried repeatedly, and as we've seen again, Hamas has rejected the last possibility of a ceasefire. So we need to still defend our people from the ongoing rockets.
In recent days, Hamas...
All Israelis are still in the line of fire.
In recent days, Hamas has indicated a willingness to look at a ceasefire, but we know that Qatar abandoned the process on the basis that it was hopeless, that neither side seemed to have an appetite for a ceasefire, even though that might help to get the hostages out.
I'll just get one thing clear. All of us are anti-war. In Israel, we don't have the privilege of living from war to war. We want to live peacefully in Israel, but we have the responsibility to defend our people. And we've seen how Hamas very cynically not just abuses their own population, but also the international community when it claims that they are willing to advance a ceasefire. They have broken the ceasefire that we were able to achieve the day 50 of this brutal war. And since then, they have been dragging all of us. So when we repeat claims by Hamas, a genocidal terror organization, we need to understand that we are playing into their hands. So don't ask us, but ask the different countries who are helping to, as mediators, that have said that it was Hamas that rejected the last possibility of a ceasefire.
Now, you mentioned the idea that some states and indeed organizations which are not states are hostile to the existence of the state of Israel. But Yoav Gallant, who's also the subject of an ICC warrant, he wanted, and said it quite openly, he wanted to get rid of the Gaza Strip entirely. I presume subsume it into Israel.
Well, make a difference between different comments that politicians said and actual decisions by the cabinet, by the Israeli cabinet and the government. What we're doing right now is fighting a war that we did not want. We want to end it, but we want to make sure that our people are safe. Not just the 101 hostages, but all of Israelis. The same way that Irish politicians are calling out for globalized intifada, that the same way that they're carrying terror organization flags in the streets of Dublin, we understand that this is not the Irish government. And what we try is analyze what the Irish government is doing. So there is a separation between statements and decisions.
Finally, I should ask you about the arrest warrants, which would have to be in order to achieve the arrest of Benjamin Netanyahu and bring him to The Hague to face the charges that have been levelled. It would require some country which he was visiting to arrest him. And we know that, for example, Vladimir Putin evaded arrest, even though he was in a country that was signatory, one of the 125 countries who are signatories to the Rome Statute setting up the ICC. But Netherlands already has said that should he go to the Netherlands, he will be arrested, the warrant will be executed. And now Micheál Martin here has said the same. Do you think it's likely that many countries will follow along these lines and they will become no-go areas for your Prime Minister?
What we have seen since yesterday, since this outrageous decision was made public, that more and more countries are coming out and objecting this decision, understanding that it's the ICC is acting as a political tool and saying that they will not be part of it. This action delegitimizes the court, and this is what we should all be worried about. All of us, especially Ireland, as a country that holds international law so dearly. All of us, small countries, Ireland, Israel, we need the help of these international mechanisms. But time and time again, they are being abused as political tools.
The final comment is coming in again and again on my text screen, the idea that Israel, because of the Holocaust, the greatest atrocity of the 20th century, because of the Holocaust, that Israel expects a free pass on everything it does.
I reject that. We abide by international law, by the rules of war. We take it very seriously. There is a lot of scrutiny into each decision and each action that goes in our cabinet, in the IDF. So saying all of that is just, I dismiss it. And when you target the only Jewish country again and again, we see the rise in anti-Semitism. And this is what all of us should be concerned.
Yeah, now, interesting news just
hatred,
breaking.
That incitement is just awful.
It's interesting news just breaking, probably good news for Benjamin Netanyahu. Hungary is going to invite your Prime Minister to visit in defiance of the ICC arrest warrant. So Viktor Orban, as you know, something of a pariah himself within the EU for his pro-Putin attitudes, is determined to be friends with your Prime Minister. So I presume you regard that as...
But we've seen also President Biden and all of the United States administration, the current one and the future one, dismissing it. We've seen more and more countries dismissing this absurd claim and understanding that this is not about international law. It's a dark day for all of us, and this is what we should be concerned about.